You're welcome to this lesson. Today, you're going to learn personification. I am Rameso Adeyemo with the brand name English with RMG, and this video is proudly brought to you by IOTA Virtual Learning Platform. In this video, you are going to learn all you need to know about personification for you to become a confident writer, a confident English user, and most importantly, excel in your examination. So, are you ready to learn with me today? Get your writing materials and let's begin. So, what is personification? Let's consider a few definitions. So, according to the Oxford Dictionary, personification is the attribution of a personal nature or human characteristics to something non human, or the representation of an abstract quality in human form. What do I mean by that? I know that students already know the common definition of all of these figure of speech. For personification, they say that it is a figure of speech that gives human attributes to inanimate objects. Yes, that is the simple definition that is embedded in all of the English that I read from the Oxford Dictionary definition. I just want you to get another perspective, another way to define it. But I know that you're already familiar that, oh, when you say something is personification, it simply means giving animate attributes to what? Inanimate objects. So let's consider a few examples. We have the sun smiled down on us, warming her skin. So we all know that smiling is an attribute of human being. So when you say the sun smiled down, you are communicating an information that is beyond you just saying that, oh, the sun is shining. You are kind of telling your reader that it is shining in a way that it is comfortable on the skin. It is shining in a way that you find it comfortable for you. You find it a beautiful experience. Do you understand? So another example we have the earth groaned under the weight of the heavy machinery. So if you've had the opportunity to be in an environment where a very heavy machine is being operated, you would be able to picture the image of you actually seeing that machine again and you being able to hear the sound of the earth as it's going to keep making a noise, vibrating as the machine is what? Operating. So personification helps us to do what? To communicate more than just the literal meaning. It is beyond just saying, oh, the machine is making a noise. But when you say the earth groaned, groaning is a what? Human attribute. When you give it a inhuman attribute, you can imagine that the earth is complaining that, oh, this machine that you're operating on me, it's too heavy because of the way the earth uh, make some uncomfortable sounds while these heavy machines are being what? Operated. Do you understand? So now we have another example. We have the wind whispered secrets in my ear. So you know when you're walking in a wind, maybe it is a windy day and you're walking, you can imagine the sound. It's going to make some sound in your ear. There is a way you hear the waves. Do you understand? In your ears. So by saying this, you're not just saying, oh, it was a windy day. You're able to communicate what someone is going to feel in that moment. If you are in that wind at that moment, you're able to communicate, you're able to create pictures, you're able to create memory in your readers or listeners' mind by using personification. So, example 4, we have the tree danced to the tune of the wind. We all know that dancing is a human attribute, but we also know that when it is windy, sometimes the trees are forced to bend towards the direction of the wind. So just like you can see on the screen now. So when you say that the tree danced, you are able to create what? Vivid imagery in the mind of your reader. Your reader can actually picture what is happening to the tree in that moment. Do you understand? So the use of personification is beyond just giving human attributes to inhuman objects. It also helps us to what? Communicate deeper meaning, create memorable imagery in the mind of our listener or our reader. Don't worry, I'm going to explain better on that as we move forward. But for now, These aspects of just being able to define personification, being able to identify it, is also often tested in your YSSE question. So let's consider a few practical questions from your YSSE past questions. Let's see your ability to identify and what indicates the function of a personification expression. So our first question is question G from part B, WAEC 1995, and it reads, as he went to bed late in the evening after a meeting with his younger brothers on how he would pay his own share of their father medical expenses, he prayed for the early arrival of the morning. So we are only concerned with the underlined expression, but I have to give you every sentence, all of the sentence, because I want you to understand the context better. Do you understand? You should also be intentional about doing this before answering any question from your when you're writing your examination. Do you understand? Don't just jump to pick the answer from the excerpt that's given to you. Go back to the passage, read it with the context, try to understand it better before you choose your answer. So the question on this is, what figure of speech is used in the above underlined expression? So here you just need to identify the figure of speech. And we have a second question which says, why do you consider it so? That is, don't just tell us that, oh, it is personification or it is metaphor. You need to tell us why you think it is so. So we have two questions for this particular question. So from the explanation that I've been making, the early arrival of morning, it's a human being that arrives somewhere. Do you understand? So it's an animate attribute. So it is what? Personification. And I consider it so because the author used an animate attribute, arrival, for morning, which is what? Inanimate. So this is an example of how to answer questions like this. If you're familiar with answering past questions already, you would have known that, oh, this is the way to answer questions like this. Do you understand? So let's move on to the next question from our YSSE past question, which is question E from part B, YEC 1998. So we have right there in the examination hall, while his pen was dancing furiously on the paper. That is the question. We have the sentence continues, but I feel like with this little context, you can understand. So they said, what figure of speech is used in the above underlined expression? So is it possible for a pen to dance? No. So dancing is a what? Animate attribute. And the question is also asking that, what does it mean? That is this expression here. What does it mean? So when you say his pen was dancing furiously, the figure of speech there is what? Personification, because you are given the human attribute, which is the ability to dance, to a pen, which is inanimate. And it also means that it was writing as fast as it could. So when you said the pen was dancing furiously, you can imagine how fast the pen must have been moving on the paper for you to describe it that it is what? Dancing furiously. So it simply means that it was writing as fast as it could. Do you understand? Please, if anything is not clear, if you have any question, you can drop it in the comments below. I will be glad to answer. Do you understand? So if you have a question or if you have written your question already, let's continue. So we have question F from section B, Y 2007. So it reads, whenever I ask myself the question, why I have not left this country for good, many answers rush to my mind. So what is that thing? Can answers rush? No. But as I've said earlier, we use figure of speech to communicate how we feel, our emotions, our state of mind, our mood in that moment, beyond just the literal statement of just saying, oh, I actually consider many answers. Do you understand? So the question is saying, what figure of speech is used in this expression? What figure of speech? I think you already know that by now. Can you write it down in the comment section? So it is what? Personification. Yes, because you are giving the animate attributes to what? To an inanimate object. And here I also need you to note that you were not asked to write why you have chosen your answer or what does it mean. Always calm down before you answer your question and make sure that you are only answering what is asked. Do you understand? Sometimes they don't ask you to tell us why you have chosen that answer or the meaning of it. They only ask you to identify the figure of speech. So just like you have in this question. So don't say, because you're already familiar with a lot of questions from the past questions where they ask you to identify and tell us the meaning. Then you go on to identify and tell the meaning. Do you understand? So only answer the questions that you are asked. Do not answer any other question beyond that. So now let's move on to question F from section B7 YX 2009. And it reads, only once did the baboons demonstrate in full force against the glare of the light, attacking the sticks, stones, and fist. But the light stood up on the onslaught and the attackers retreated. So we are primarily concerned with the what? The underlined expression, which is, but the light stood up to the what? Onslaught. So is it possible for light to stand up? No. Standing up is what? Animate object, animate attribute, but it is given to what? An inanimate object here. Again, I like to give you the full sentence so that you can understand the context better beyond just the words, only the words that was what? Underlined. So the question is saying, what figure of speech is used in the underlined expression above? So from our explanation, we already know it is what? Personification, because standing up is a what? Human attribute, not an inanimate attribute. Now that it has been given to light, which is inanimate, it is what? Personification. Do you understand? I hope you can understand how I'm able to identify, oh, it is personification. Do you understand? Now let's move on to the next part, which is to discuss the purpose of personification. Most times students just know, feel like, oh, this figure of speech are just there for me to be able to define them and be able to identify them. But in reality, the purpose of teaching and learning this figure of speech is beyond just being able to define them and being able to identify them. So let's see these purposes. So the first purpose of learning or teaching personification is for you to be able to create vivid imagery. These purposes are also some of the reasons why authors use personification. So we could also have to evoke and convey emotions. That is, beyond just giving the information, you will be able to also communicate the emotion. Do you understand that is happening in that moment? Also, you can also use personification to convey complex ideas. Don't worry, we are still going to explain in detail. And personification also encourages creative and critical thinking. This purpose is actually extremely important, but when we get there, we'll explain better. And it also helps build connection with the reader and the subject matter. That is, you don't just get to know, but you get to understand and experience whatever it is your author is saying. Do you understand? In that moment. Now let's consider how to use personification to achieve all of these purposes. So first, to create vivid imagery. So personification often use human attributes details such as facial expressions and body gestures or movements to relate an idea or create an imagery so that the subject matter is communicated in a more relatable way. So just like the examples that we have earlier, the sun smiled on us. You are not just saying, oh, the sun was shining. When you say the sun smile, in that moment as the reader or as the listener, you can actually imagine it. Do you understand? Beyond, you can imagine how gentle the sun must have been in that moment. You know, the sun can be scorching as well. But when you say it smiles, you can tell that, oh, this person is trying to say that the sun is friendly in this moment. Do you understand? And you can as well imagine how it must have been shining in that moment. So it creates imagery. Another thing is the earth groaned. When you hear this, you can actually, or when you read this, you can imagine, especially if you've experienced how the earth, kind of protest with the kind of sound that accompanies the usage of these heavy duty machines. Do you understand? In that moment, you can imagine listening to that sound again. how the earth is actually doing what? Protesting from this heavy duty machinery. Do you understand? So it helps to create vivid imagery. And imagery is not limited to just visual, that is what you can picture in your mind. It can also be auditory, just like when you say the earth groaned. You can imagine the sound that the earth makes while these heavy duty machines are being operated. Do you understand? So, for you to get better understanding, I'm also going to explain the types of imagery that can be created with the usage of personification and other figure of speech. So, now let's move on to types of what? Imagery. Types of imagery. It is not just, when we say imagery, sometimes students would think that it is only visual, that is what you can picture in your mind. No. Imagery can be visual, can be auditory, can be olfactory. Let's see. So we could have visual imagery. So when we say this imagery is visual, that is immediately you read that line, you can imagine the mental picture in your mind. Do you understand? So just like that, the sun smile, you can imagine the shining of the sun in that moment. Do you understand? There are other examples that we are also going to use to exemplify this. So, example one, we have the moon glowed with a gentle face. So when you read this, you can picture it in your mind. The mental picture of a beautiful moon on a beautiful evening will come to your mind that, oh, in fact, you can imagine walking or being in a beautiful park in that moment. So when you use personification this way, it helps to create what? Vivid visual imagery. Another example for visual imagery is the cloud drifted lazily, morphing into castles and creatures. So there's cloud everywhere. So you must have experienced maybe walking on one evening or on a beautiful morning, and you notice the cloud moving towards a particular direction. Do you understand? So moving slowly, slowly, slowly. So because the author want to or the writer want to communicate a particular mood. So the author can say the cloud drifted lazily, that is slowly. And in that moment, you can picture looking at the cloud and seeing the way it is what? Moving slowly, 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 just drifting it or dragging the clouds to a particular destination. So visual imagery or imagery generally is a beautiful language feature that makes us to experience language, to not just speak language, but also have better experience with it. So we are also going to discuss other types of imagery, which includes olfactory, tactile, gustatory, and whole. And we are also going to discuss other purposes of personification. But I do not want this video to be too long for you. So you can just click on the link that is showing on your screen, or you can go to the description below to continue to the end. Trust me, you do not want to miss it because this aspect is crucial for your section A, which often carry 50 marks in your YSSE, beyond just being able to identify it in your comprehension section. So trust me, you do not want to miss the rest of this video. So if you are familiar with this imagery, olfactory is what? Imagery that appeal to your sense of what? Let me know in the comments. So, do you have any question? If you have any question, do not hesitate to put it in the comments below, as I'll be there to answer all of your questions. Or if you so now let's continue with other forms of imagery. So, imagery can also be tactile. So, when we say that an imagery is tactile, it means that you are using language or you are going to use that figure of speech to evoke the feelings of touch or texture in the reader's mind. So, this we are discussing imagery under the purposes of what? Personification. That was where we stopped from the first part. So we are discussing this so that you can understand why authors use personification and so that you can understand how to also incorporate it into your own writing styles as well, so that you can become a confident writer, a captivating writer, even beyond your YSSC level. You will be able to write captivating what? Write up. So tactile imagery can also convey textures such as smoothness, roughness, softness, hardness, or other surface qualities. It can convey temperatures such as warmth, coolness, coldness, etc. It can as well convey sensations such as sprinkling, tingling, numbness, etc. It can as well convey physical contact such as touch, pressure, or what? Vibration. If you are a novel reader, you would have experienced this. You would read some novel and you will be so engrossed with the content, you wouldn't even want to drop the book. This is because the author has understood how to use what? Figure of speech to captivate their audience. So let's look at a few examples of tactile imagery using personification. So we have the warm breeze caressed my skin and its gentle fingers traces my arms. So this is just beyond you just saying, oh, when I went out, I felt the warm breeze. No. When you say the warm breeze caressed my skin, you can imagine the feeling of that breeze on your skin as you read that write-up. So you also need to be intentional to add these kind of expressions to your own write up as well. Do you understand? In order for you to keep your audience engaged, to make them experience whatever it is that you are what trying to tell them. By doing this, you will be showing your reader what you really want to pass across. You wouldn't just be telling them. Do you understand? So let's look at another example. We have the gentle rain kissed my forehead. So when you say this, you are also communicating the emotion, how you feel about the rain. Do you understand? So it shows that you are not angry, that you got caught up in the rain. It is actually an experience that you would enjoy. It is an experience that you would describe to be what? Blissful. So beyond tactile and visual, imagery can also be auditory. I said something about this auditory imagery in the previous video. So, when you hear imagery, you might want to think, oh, it's just what you can see. No, imagery can also be auditory. The use of words can also evoke your sense of what's hearing. So, it is the use of language to create vivid sensory experience of sound in the reader's mind. It could be a soothing sound, it could be a harsh sound, it could be an unpleasant sound. Do you understand? But by using language, an author can also make their reader imagine the kind of different types of sounds. Do you understand? So let's consider a few examples. We have the wind whispered secrets in my ears. So when you say this, you are communicating your experience better than just saying, "Oh, it was windy when I went out." Do you understand? So you're also you'll be communicating your experience beyond what just happened. That oh, it was windy. You would be communicating your experience of what your ability to hear the sound of the wind in your ears as you walk through the wind. Maybe it's a windy night, a windy afternoon, or a windy morning. Are you following? So, example two for auditory, we have the reader sang a gentle melody and its soothing voice calm my mind. So if you've been at a seashore before or you've gone to a bar beach, you will know that when the when you're at a seashore or at the beach, you could hear the sound that the river will make as it moves back and forth. And this is usually very soothing to hear. You know, by saying this, you would even make your reader understand the atmosphere better. So imagery can also be olfactory. So when we say that this imagery is olfactory, it means that you are using language to create vivid imagery of what? Smell. So not just visual, not just tactile, not just sound. You can also use words to evoke your readers or your listeners' sense of what? Smell. Just by using vivid imagery, do you understand? In your expression. So you could have the scent of freshly cut grass, whispered sweet nothings in my ear. So when you hear this, you can actually imagine the scent of freshly cut grass. If you are familiar with it already, or if you say that, oh, the scent of freshly brewed coffee welcomed me into the home. You can imagine freshly brewed coffee, the smell of it in that moment as well, especially if it is something that you often do in your house as well. So as you read it, you'll be able to imagine it. And by imagining it, you'll be able to get more connected to the subject matter or to the storyline in which you are reading or listening to. So the smell can also be unpleasant, such as the stench of rotten garbage growled in protest, and its foul breath makes me gag. So by reading this kind of thing as well, or by using language like this, you can carry your audience along. They will be able to understand that, oh, everybody that read this can imagine perceiving an horrible smell, and they will be able to, kind of experience whatever it is that that character in that moment, or the person you are talking about in that moment, will feel. So it is just beyond you saying, oh, this it was a bad smell. No, it was a bad smell, it's just an ordinary statement. But if you really want to carry your audience along, your readers along, you need to learn how to incorporate use of imagery, such as all of this experience that I've given you in your write-up. So imagery can also be gustatory, which is the fifth and the last type of imagery. So, gustatory is the use of language to create vivid sensory experience of taste in the reader's mind. It is a form of imagery that appeals to the reader's sense of taste, evoking flavors, textures, and sensations. That is beyond pictures, beyond smell, beyond feelings that you have on your skin, or beyond the smell as well. You can as well use language to evoke your readers or your listeners' sense of what taste. So let's look at these examples. So we have the bitterness of the coffee scolded me, and its sharp words linger on my palate. So when you read a sentence like this, you can imagine how bitter and how sharp the coffee must have been for your audience, for the person or for the character to respond to it this way. It is better to use imagery than to just say, oh, it was a bitter coffee. That is just an informatory statement. Do you understand? But if you want your reader to keep connected and experience whatever it is that you are saying alongside with you, then you need to consider incorporating the use of figure of speech, including personification, into your write up. So, another example is the spiciness of the curry danced on my tongue. Everybody knows that how uncomfortable one can be when you take something that is spicy. Do you understand? You would want to, you will feel like bringing your tongue out. So by saying the spiciness of the curry danced on your tongue, you can actually imagine how uncomfortable it must have been for your tongue in that moment. Are you following? I hope I'm not so fast and I hope you are getting the point. So by now, I hope you understand my point that personification has purposes beyond you just being able to define it and being able to identify them in sentences. Their purposes is for you to also create what? Engaging write up, creative write up, captivating write up. So now let's move on to the next purpose of personification on our list, which is to evoke and convey complex emotions. Emotions can be complex ordinarily. Your ability to express your emotions sometimes is not as easy as you feel it. So let's see how personification can help us communicate it better. So personification helps to communicate complex emotions in a more relatable way so that the reader does not just know what happened, but also connects with what happened in a way that he or she can feel and empathize with the emotional state of the subject matter at hand. That is, when you use personification and, like, for example, when you say the wind whispered secrets in my ears. You are not just saying, oh, it was windy. You are as well communicating what you are likely to feel in that moment if you were in that wind. That is, you are going to also feel the waves of the wind in your ears. Do you understand? So let's consider other examples. So we have the wind was blowing strongly. This is an ordinary statement. Do you understand? If you say the wind was blowing strongly, it is just an ordinary statement. Okay, I've heard you. but there's no emotion. I can't feel anything connected to the information that you have given me. But if I say that the wind howled in anger, shaking the trees, you are able to communicate deeper meaning, deeper emotions. You can imagine how the wind must have been blowing so strongly that the trees were also what? Shaking. You can even imagine that if you were in that scene, you would have to close your eyes because the wind might also be what? Moving other things that could be dangerous to your eyes in that moment. So, the use of personification helps us to communicate complex emotions beyond just the literal words um, or the ordinary words that we could use. So, another thing is you can say the rain was falling, or the rain was heavy, or there was a downpour this morning. That would be just an informative statement. But when you say the rain wept furiously, drumming against the roof, you would be able to communicate the feelings. Oh, while maybe you're even in the room, you could feel how heavy the rain is because you could perceive the raindrops on your roof. Do you understand? And when you say wept furiously, you are communicating how heavy the rain was. Do you understand? So personification alongside with other figure of speech helps us to communicate beyond just the literal words. We are able to communicate emotions, moods, atmosphere better by using what? Personification. Don't worry, I'm still going to give you practical examples from or how to apply this practically using questions from your past YSSC question. So now let's move on to the next purpose of um personification, which is to convey complex ideas. So, personification helps communicate complex ideas and concepts in a more relatable and memorable way, especially abstract ideas, by creating what? Vivid imagery that helps the reader connect better with the subject matter. Excuse me. Thereby fostering better, memorable understanding of the subject matter. That is, beyond complex emotions, you can as well use personification to communicate complex ideas or complex concepts. So, for example, when we have progress often requires sacrifice, this is also another ordinary informative statement. But if you would like to also communicate deeper meanings and make it more relatable to your listener, you could say something like, progress is a demanding teacher that requires us to pay the price of hard work. So, as a listener, you can imagine having a demanding teacher that would not accept a mediocre effort from you. If you do it and you are not doing it right, the teacher is going to ask you to go back to redo it again, to redo it again, to redo it again until you get the desired results. Do you understand? So by giving this kind of expression, it makes it more relatable. It makes it more understandable that oh, I need to keep making effort until I get what my desired results. If truly I want to what progress at what I am doing. So it is a better way to express complex ideas than just using ordinary statement. So let's move on to the next purpose of using personification, which is it encourages creative and critical thinking. I would really want to implore you here to pay attention because, in fact, this is a full topic on its own, creative and critical thinking, and it cuts across different fields. But here we are particular about writing, English, developing your English skills. Do you understand? So, the usage of personification and many other figure of speech in writing usually encourages critical and creative thinking. This begs the question, what is critical and creative thinking? So, let me just ask you, have you ever been taught, maybe in your English class or in your literature class, the teacher has walked in to tell you, today's topic we are going to discuss critical and creative thinking. Have you ever been in any class? Let me know in the comments. So, what is critical and creative thinking? Critical and creative thinking is the ability to analyze, synthesize, evaluate, and interpret ideas, concepts, and meanings in order to arrive at the best way to communicate one's ideas, perspective, concept, or meaning. I would like you to pay attention to the fact that this definition I'm giving is in the context of teaching writing. Do you understand? Critical thinking and creative thinking cuts across different fields. So this definition is limited to the context of writing. Do you understand? So when we talk about critical and creative thinking, what I'm saying to you is that when you want to write any write up, you already have your topic. Don't just free write from the beginning to the end. Oh, I've read the question. Let me just answer. No, you need to ask yourself questions. Which message am I trying to pass across in this write up? How better or how well do I express myself so that my audience is going to understand the message that I'm going to that I want to pass across? The first idea, the first sentence that comes to you might not be the best. Do you understand? So you need to calm down to challenge your own thinking. Critical thinking is thinking about your own thinking. When you think about that idea, oh, this is, I know what I'll write already. Challenge it before you eventually write it. Is it really making sense? Is it really passing the information that I wanted to pass across? How better can I say this? Instead of just saying, it was a beautiful sunny day. Why can't I just say that the sun smiled on my beautiful skin, or on my tender skin on this amazing afternoon? By saying that, I'll be creating more vivid imagery. I'll be keeping my audience or my reader more connected to what I'm trying to say. Do you understand? So critical and creative thinking is your ability to challenge your own thinking. Do you understand? Your own ability, your own writing skills, your own writing styles. Are you following? So, personification is going to encourage you to think critically, because it is not just going to come to you at once. You need to think critically and creatively for you to come up with what? Um, Sentences of what? Personification. So, let's look at this example. We have the road was lonely. Instead of just saying the road was lonely, you could, when you think about it again and again, you could come up with something like, the road whispered to the shadows of trees, such that its loneliness was a heavy burden to bear. And when you say it this way, your reader can actually picture walking on a lonely road where all you can see is the shadows of the trees along the road. So by saying this, you'll be able to keep your reader engaged, connected to the subject matter. Do you understand? Your reader will have the opportunity to experience that moment alongside with you. It wouldn't be you just giving information, it will be you captivating your reader. Do you understand? And that is why I've said that this course or this video is beyond just preparing for your WAEC. It is also what you need to learn to become a confident writer forever. In even though you graduate, you want to become a writer, you want to become a lawyer, you want to be whatever it is that you want to become. When you need to write, always remember all the lessons that you are learning in this video today. Do you understand? So let's consider other examples. So example 2, you could say, I was very happy that night. That's an ordinary statement like that. So you know that you want to communicate that moment of being happy. But when you say I was very happy that night, you are not communicating the emotion, what you feel. You are not helping your reader to experience that experience with you. But when you say something like this, that night I felt joy caressing my soul like a gentle breeze, and it suits my heart and soul. So by saying that, your reader would also imagine feeling that joy alongside with you at the bottom of their heart. And this is what make readers connected to the subject matter. And this is why authors use figure of what speech. And that is why you also need to incorporate it in your writing skills as well. So let's look at the last purpose, which is to build connection between the reader and the subject matter. So personification helps to build connection. In fact, I've said this alongside my explanation, my previous explanation. But let's see again. We have the usage of personification helps create vivid imagery and set tone, mood, and atmosphere so that the subject matter is communicated in a more relatable way. This helps the reader to not just read the words, but also connect with the mood, tone, and atmosphere being communicated. So when you use personification, not just personification, every other figure of speech as well, it helps you to build, just like the example I give, that that night joy crept into my soul and caresses my soul. When you give expressions like that, you keep your words, your audience connected to you, that I felt joy caressing my soul like a gentle breeze, and it suits my heart and soul. Or the first example that I give, it helps to keep your audience connected to you. It helps your reader to also experience whatever it is that you are trying to narrate as well. So don't just use ordinary statements from the beginning to the end of your write-up. Try to always intentionally include figure of speech. So now let's move on to how we can apply this to questions from your YSSE past questions. Because if I don't do this with you, it means that I'm just giving you information. I'm not being practical. So let's look at a few questions from the past questions. So we have question 5 from section A, Y 2001. So, from section A, we usually have 5 questions, but you are only asked to choose one and answer. So I've chosen one, which is a story. So write a story which ends with the statement, better late than never. So I want to write this story. In writing, you usually have liberty of creativity. You can come up with any form of write-up, especially this is a story. You can come up with any story of your choice. So for my own story, I've tried to write this paragraph as what is going to be my last paragraph. Let me read it first before I tell you what I've been writing previously. They said the sentence should end the paragraph. Sorry, the sentence should end the story. So I'm assuming that this is going to be my last paragraph. So as I approached Papa's house that night, the moon smiled benevolently, casting a gentle glow on the journey's end. So, I've been able to use what? Personification by saying the moon smiled. So I'm not just going to say the moon was bright or it was a night where we have a beautiful. No. When you use figure of speech like this, it helps you create that mood, that atmosphere. So your reader can imagine that, oh, it was a beautiful evening where the moon was what? Fully out. So it illuminates my realization that even the most delayed of arrivals can still find beauty in the destination. Thus, with a heart full of gratitude, I stepped into Papa's compound once again, and I sighed in relief as Papa welcomed me with his warm embrace. Once again, I said, it is better late than never. So here I'm imagining that I've written this story as me being a victim of a wicked auntie who took me to Lagos with a promise that she's going to give me a better life. But I realized she was going to use me for what? Human trafficking. Then after meeting people, experiencing different things, I eventually escaped and I was able to come back to my father. Do you understand? So let's look at another example. We have WAEC 2020, section A, question 1. So we have your brother, who is in the third year in another school, has written to confide in you that he is about to stop schooling and go into business. Write a letter to him advising him against his decision. So let's say I want to answer this question. How do I incorporate personification into my answer? So here I have it. Dear brother, as I read your letter, doubt crept in like a thief, stealing the sparkles from my eyes. That is, in that moment, doubt crept in. That's a form of what? Personification. Fear whispered warnings in my ears, painting vivid pictures of a future uncertain. However, wisdom urged me to share her counsel with you. Education is a garden, brother, where seeds of knowledge bloom into flowers of opportunities. Abandoning it now would be like a farmer forsaking his fields, leaving them to wither and die. So by using this personification at the beginning, I'm able to create imagery, not just say, "Oh, I was scared when I read your letter," or "I'm afraid." You might I'm afraid about what your future outcome is going to be. Rather than just using ordinary statements, step up your writing skills by adding what? Personification. And that is why I'm giving you practical examples of how to do it in answering your what? YSSC questions. Since this video is devoted to YSSC students. Do you understand? So here I'm imagining that I'm trying to express my fear for the decision that my brother has made to my what? To my audience, or to, sorry, to him. I'm trying to express it in that write up. So how do I say it using personification without just using ordinary statement? So I thought of, instead of me just saying I was scared, I thought of using what? Fear, whispered warnings in my what? In my ears. Do you understand? I hope you can do that now on your own. Do you have any question? Please, if anything is not clear, put it in the comment section below. I'll be there and I'll be glad to answer your question. If anything is not clear, just ask any question. And please tell everyone about IOTA Virtual Learning Platform. Tell a friend to tell a friend about English with RMG. If you're yet to subscribe, subscribe to this channel, like and share. And also give us your thoughts. Let us know what you think.